Everyone talks about improving CX, better surveys, cleaner UX, faster support, but none of that fixes the underlying problem, misalignment. In this video, you'll uncover the real reason why customer experience efforts fail and why everyone is working really hard but not smart. You'll learn how to diagnose structural misalignment and rethink how organizations are or aren't coordinated around the customer journey. The real threat in CX isn't a lack of effort. It's silos preventing teams to work together effectively when then teams optimize in isolation. According to a recent report by Forrester, only 70% of companies believe their departments collaborate effectively on improving CX outcomes, despite 75%, 3/4, saying it's a top priority. Over the years, I've worked with teams that had everything, right? A solid brand, an amazing customer experience function, plenty of tools, yet nothing stuck. Customer pain persisted. When you ask them, like on their strategy, what is it? You typically get mission, vision, big strategic framework, typically looks like a house with a couple of pillars. And in that framework, there's usually one pillar that covers customer centricity. We're customer obsessed. Everything we do is about the customer. Customer satisfaction is our number one priority. When we started to map it out, the root cause was always the same. It wasn't a lack of insights or deep understanding of the customer, but it's the structure for how work aligned to the customer journey. This was before we started a product company to solve this. Now, today I'm not going to talk about the product company, but I'm going to talk about this pesky, large, huge problem that we have been not able to solve for decades. So over the last 10 years, I've been helping the largest companies in the world to make their teams work better together. Most CX initiatives treat symptoms like surveys or UI fixes or NPS boosts and try to figure out what to do about them, but they leave the root causes of problem solving untouched. It's easy to mistake visible activity for structural progress, and we're going to break it down. So a couple of things first. Systemic misalignment happens when departments optimize in isolation. And that's where the word silo comes from. Everyone is talking about it. Everyone has them. We try to break them. But I don't think that's the right way. Every time someone says, like, we need to break the silos, I think, no, silos are good in some ways and they're bad in others. So we're going to unpack that. But first, we have to understand that because of the structural usefulness of a silo, we were able to scale the business, become a multi-billion-dollar, multi-country global corporation serving customers across the planet. It creates accountability, it creates ownership, and it creates simple to follow structures so we can do the best work possible. But the customer experience suffers because it cuts across all of these silos. And we're going to get back into that in a second. But first, I want to talk about what happens when these silos in your business, these departments, these business units are not connecting their data and decisions together. So there's basically 4 types of costs associated with having silos in the first place. We all have them. We almost all accept them, except that they can be like huge in large companies. Okay, I'm going to talk all 4 and we're going to unpack them a little bit. So the first one is collection cost, the price of redundant research and data. How many times have you tried to figure out a customer problem, done some digging, done some research, done some interviews, analyzed the data, and then found that the insight you got, another team already had? This happens all the time. And we are not aware of the other teams trying to piece this together. We have different ways of thinking about a customer. We have our ICP, we have our persona, we have our segment, we have our different ways of understanding how we relate to the customer in the first place. Every team does it differently. Marketing has maybe an ICP model, or they think about the different segments in the market. Product thinks about personas, and then sales thinks about buyers and champions. So everyone has a different idea of who our customer actually is. So when we're collecting data, when we're analyzing data, we're all doing that with the best intentions inside our silo. So that's the first cost of having to pay a price for redundant research and data collection. The second one is contextualizing. So the context cost is basically the price of misinterpretation. An insights team capturing the customer experience and trying to understand what the frustration is does it in a different way than the user experience team that is typically focused on the digital app, for instance, and understanding insights from that perspective. So when we're hearing the same things, But putting that in our own context, these things don't travel well, and we don't understand what one team is saying to the other. So having a shared context definitely helps, but typically silos disallow us to have that structured context that everyone can agree on. So that's the second cause of having silos in the first place. The third thing, and it actually leads into, is the price of slow or no action, the decision cost. Okay, so it takes months to get something done in a large organization sometimes. Even if we've done the data collection and we have done the research, going from data to insight to action takes months. So why is that? That's really the price we're paying for slow or no action between these silos. I remember when working with one of the largest telcos in the world, they said churn is a big problem, as in most telcos it is, right? We're losing customers every year. It's basically the cost of doing business, okay? But we can bring that churn down, and we have all these insights from all these different customers, from all these different research that we've done, from all these data that we collected, and we kind of know what all the frustrations are. But what they didn't have is a consistent way of agreeing what was the most important across the different teams so they could take action. And as a result, over the next 12 months, nothing was done. Nothing got done. So they knew the business problem, they knew the frustration customers were having, but they lacked a way to together say, okay, that's why this is the most important thing. So say, because they lacked that shared context and they were collecting data in different parts of the business, they couldn't make decisions. So the silos were creating endless needs of meetings and reports, and ultimately no decision was taken. And that brings me to the fourth cost of having silos, the price of cross-functional execution in the delivery cost. So following on this thread, to get something done, let's say we take our agile teams and they have a ton of stuff on their roadmaps, on their backlogs, and they're working in increments, they're working in sprints. So for them, output is output. So whatever they build is building and they're doing their job. But what they are building needs to be prioritized correct to have actually value for customers and ultimately for the business. But if we do not have systems in place that help us understand the customer journey throughout these silos, there's a big price we're paying, because we might build the wrong thing and ultimately that doesn't create value. In some organizations, 60% of R&D efforts, so everything that we're designing, building, and delivering to the customer, is not seeing the end of the year. So basically we throw it out again. So the price of cross-functional execution, when the silos are not talking to each other, not sharing data, not contextualizing it together, is real. So it makes us slow to actually get something done. And it also makes us maybe do the wrong thing. Even though we are delivering something, it wasn't tied to anything valuable for the customer. So as you can see, the problems are not really the silos, but it's a lack of cross-functional orchestration across them. Not having silos or having silos is not the question. We don't need to break them. We don't need to dissolve them. We need to make them work better together. I like the analogy of a sports team, right? When we think about a sports team, every player has a different role to play. We have offense, defense, and I like soccer. I'm in Amsterdam, right? So when we think about how to win a game, you have to score goals. But that doesn't mean that a defender cannot score goals. So together, we're moving to make sure that we're playing the game on the field. Everyone has different roles to play. And when we bridge that to business, it is the same. So the customer journey is the game we're playing. Everyone should be aligned to making that customer journey as easy, as smooth, as frictionless, as pleasant, whatever it is that your intention is. I mean, if you are a high volume e-commerce business, it is all about speed and price, like Amazon. But if you're an insurance company, it's all about customer lifetime value over the decades that someone is a customer of yours. Another example would be an airline. Let's take Lufthansa as an example, because what they have done is remarkable to really unite across the different teams, from UX to product management to customer experience to service. They say, look, our product, even if it's the app that they refer to as product, is always a sequence of experiences. So when you think about that, a sequence of experiences, it actually makes sense, because when you go on a holiday and book your flights, well, that's just one part of your end-to-end journey. You go from planning your trip to booking to actually taking the trip to hanging out on the airport and every step in between, right? And you're interacting through digital channels. You're interacting with staff at the airport, in the airplane. And that whole package is a sequence of experiences that do not happen in a continuum. There's all these different parts in your life that get in between. But from Lufthansa's perspective, when you think about that end-to-end journey, you're almost cutting across every different part of their business. Even though the silos, when they only look at their part, are not understanding the end-to-end, but when you think about it from who is playing what role to make that customer journey possible, assigning ownership actually reveals how the blind spots between teams are occurring and how to solve for them. So bringing in a journey-centric approach to aligning, coordinating, sharing data, making decisions across the silos is the way forward to reduce that cost of doing business in the first place. So again, silos really help to structure and have accountability. But from a customer perspective, if you fail to coordinate across these silos, your experience will suffer, the friction will remain, customers will leave you, and ultimately the business suffers. So if this resonates, take a moment to reflect. Where in your organization are good intentions blocked by poor structure? And if you want to help moving forward from isolated efforts to coordinated action, journey management might just be the way forward for you. And in this series, I'm going to dig into all the nooks and crannies, the strategies, the ways of working, and the examples of how companies are getting this done. And I'm going to take your questions. I'm going to bring in your perspective and answer from my experience what actually works to move the needle. So if you found this useful, subscribe for more insights and see you for the next one.